brought armored cars to the streets, describing the rioters as gangsters, and quelled the rioting with brute force characteristic of Britain. The government shut down all social media that reported the true picture and eventually took 9-year-old children to court at 4 a.m. for protesting against atrocities committed by the racist British government against minorities. Britain does not have the moral authority to treat human rights to the Gambia, and their campaign for the acceptance of homosexuality will never be tolerated in the Gambia. UK and US, who freely preach freedom of the press and information sharing openly, are still laying siege to a foreign embassy in London in violation of international law. Julian Assange's only crime is exercising the freedom of the press and democracy they have always been preaching to others. In the same West, a presidential plane was forced to land and subjected to search for 10 hours because they thought Snowden was on that plane. His only crime for which he is wanted dead or alive is exposing and informing humanity about programs that violate their privacy, freedom of speech, and association. These same Western powers preach press freedom and democracy daily, though they routinely invade and rob resources-rich countries of the Third World. These are Western countries where being black is tantamount to a death sentence which can be carried out by any white person in the street. We cannot accept the principles of any power that maintains one set of standards for themselves and another for the rest of mankind. The only standards we accept without question are those set out in the Holy Quran and the Holy Bible. Naturally, since these Western powers are challenging the laws of Allah, we will never accept their satanic values despite their hostile, racist, and despicable campaign of smear against the Gambia government, and by extension, the noble Allah-fearing people of the Gambia. In conclusion, we have evidence to back our claims in the form of attestations and correspondences by those unpatriotic and ungodly vermins to the powers that be. We have copies of all false attestations. All Gambians should know that 98% of the people given these false attestations are not even known to the Gambia government. The false attestations made in attempts to gain asylum include but are not limited to the following. In the Gambia, UDP Treasurer Momodou Sabally prepared a false attestation for one Malang party claiming he was arrested and tortured, a claim Mr. Sabally knew to be false. So-called UDP youth wing leader Momodou El Nyasi alias Shingul Nyasi prepared false attestations for one Sekou Mbalo resident at 1818 Clay Avenue, the Bronx, New York, United States of America, who, after gaining asylum based on false testimony, made several false and malicious attestations. Mr. Mbalo is an executive member of the UDP in the United States. He is also president of the so-called Gambian Movement for Democracy and Development in the U.S. He has made false attestations for people including Lamin Sanyang, former staff of the Gambian Embassy in the U.S., and Seli Marena. He also prepared attestations for Keba Kinte, Haji Bohum, Alaji Baba Dukure, Mr. Asan Martin, Babukar Mbalo, Abdullah Bokum, Abubakar Silla, Mr. Ibrahim Balde, and others whose details will be provided as investigations continue. They even give false attestations to people we believe are non-Gambians. It is ridiculous that the people that the UDP and their agents around the world are preparing false attestations for by claiming that they are being arrested, tortured, and persecuted are all scarcely known to most Gambians. It beats common sense that the leadership of the UDP are living and operating freely in the Gambia, and at the same time their junior and unknown riffraffs of their party, UDP, are claiming harassment. This is nothing but a callous, treacherous, and wicked attempt to smear the image of the country for narrow political and personal interests. To the shock and dismay of patriotic and God-fearing Gambians, these false claims and attestations have enjoyed the support of high-profile officials of the United States Senate Foreign Relations Committee, including Senator Richard J. Dobbin, alias Dick Dobbin, Senator Ross Feingold, Senator Robert P. Casey, Senator Joe Lieberman, Senator Benjamin L. Cardin, and Senator Paddy Murray. will never support evil. Out of thousands of Gambians in the USA, only 9 people came out as demonstrators despite their vigorous campaign online for Gambians to come out and demonstrate. God-fearing, patriotic Gambians rejected this evil call and went about their normal business. The United States of America cannot morally claim to be the bastion of human rights, freedom, and democracy, as her bloody track record shows from their independence to date. It is a country that was lifted from backwardness, poverty, and violence to superpower status, as well as the largest economy in the world, by the sweat, blood, and tears of millions of African slaves. Though slavery has ended technically today, the armed robbery of petroleum-rich and mineral-endowed countries continues unabated under various pretexts. The most fashionable pretext being promotion of democracy and human rights and so-called war on terror. What a blatant deception. From Vietnam, Latin America, and Korea to the Middle East and Africa, from the Pacific to the Atlantic and Indian Oceans, the story of the self-appointed international policeman remains the same. Everywhere they went, they left nothing but a trail of death and destruction. From the last decade to date, Iraq stands out as a typical example for this 21st century. A country that condemns the Gambia government for putting criminals before the law continues to sponsor this false and disgraceful malicious smear campaign against the government of the Gambia since 1994. Invaded Iraq to get rid of a dictator under pretext and ended up destroying hundreds of thousands of Iraqi lives, committing outrageous war crimes, massive slaughter of Iraqi women and children, and appalling human rights abuses. Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo Bay prisons stand testimony to this. It left Iraqis reeling under a dangerously divided country with deep-seated sectarian violence that is causing death and destruction on a daily basis. A country where the minority black population constitutes 99% of all death row inmates, where even mentally deranged people are tried and condemned to death and eventually executed, cannot stand even on the devil's platform and condemn any country, more so the Gambia. They cite without any proof and iota of truth arbitrary arrests, detention without trial, and extrajudicial executions in the Gambia. What about the people in Guantanamo Bay? What about the other people that were kidnapped and held in secret locations around the globe in their campaign of terror called War on Terror? Why are these people not being tried, if at all they committed any terror-related offenses? Let the USA tell the Gambia and the whole world the definition of extrajudicial execution, and then explain who tried, where, and when, and sentenced to death by drone attack the hundreds of people being killed by U.S. drone attacks in the Middle and Far East and Africa. Finally, all the thousands of Muslims that were rounded up in the U.S. in the aftermath of 9/11 and have never been put before a court of law for 12 years. Not even their parents or attorneys can have access to them. Don't they have the same human rights as non-Muslim white Americans? Blacks being shot and killed by white U.S. police officers with impunity, are they not human beings in the USA? A country that has legalized white racist death squads for the sole purpose of lynching and terrorizing blacks, Jews, Muslims, and other non-white minorities under the protection of a numbered amendment in the U.S. Constitution, has no moral legs to stand on and criticize any other country, more so the Gambia. The Ku Klux Klan, the Aryan Nation, the white supremacists, neo-Nazi and others are nothing but white death squads that should have been banned and prosecuted for their crimes against minorities in any truly democratic and human rights protecting country. Racist vigilante groups kill blacks with impunity. Instead of protecting their poor minorities as a responsible and democratic government, they are persecuting them through right-wing white paramilitary groups. A country which was salvaged from abject poverty to become the richest nation on earth through black sweat, blood, and tears, unfortunately is the country where you find the poorest black neighborhoods in the Western Hemisphere. Blacks live in a constant state of fear, harassment, and racial abuse, and such is on the increase in the United States of America. As opposed to the Republic of the Gambia, where since 1994 no one has ever been harassed, lynched, or arrested by virtue of color, race, religion, or origin. Even white European settlers in the Gambia have never been discriminated or subjected to any humiliation, either by the public or by the security forces of the Gambia. The only people that are not welcome, obviously, are the pedophiles, homosexuals, drug dealers, and racists. If you live in a glass house, don't throw stones, quote unquote. Anti-Islamism, racism, and cultural and religious intolerance are on the rise in the West. Perhaps they should come to the Gambia to learn what a truly tolerant, civilized, democratic, and Allah-worshipping country in the 21st century is all about. The government of the Gambia will continue to uphold and implement all judgments of the courts in the country based on the Constitution and other laws of the Gambia. There has been some noise about the execution of 9 convicted murderers, but the world should know that the executions were suspended only due to appeals made by Gambian people and not due to international pressure, as falsely portrayed by the BBC and other international Western media. No neo-colonial powers will dictate what happens in our country. The Gambia is the best example of peaceful coexistence of all religions and races. We do not treat people based on color, religion, or origin, as all are equal before the law. We will never tolerate homosexuality. Our laws are not subject to the approval of anybody except the Gambian people. The Gambia remains and will continue to be a sovereign state that respects the rights of her people and the sovereignty of other nation-states. We are not against any country, religion, or party. But we will never compromise our independence, dignity, and freedom. We live for and serve the only one true God, Allah, and it is only the command of Allah that we will obey. We remain independent and vow to never bow down to the dictates of any foreign power or neo-colonial interests. The schemes and machinations of the enemies of the Gambia will never bear fruit as we continue to rise with pride and dignity, a people determined to live independent and dignified lives forever. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Badin Bankudun Kolu, GRPS Nalu Control.